But I do want to get to this Brendan Schaub business, shall we?
We shall.
So you got to tell me, first and foremost, is there any chance if Brendan Schaub and Nate Diaz were to fight, what does that look like? Because I don't know UFC. I know Nate Diaz, very famous for fighting, whereas Brendan Schaub, I know he did well in the UFC. He was in the top 10 or 11 at one point.
Yep.
But like it didn't reach the heights that Nate Diaz had. So would it be possible if they were to fight that would be close?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, he was a top 10 heavyweight. Nate Diaz fights at between 150 and 170.
Oh, so Brendan Schaub has 100 pounds on him.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay, that's it. Okay, that does add to this. I'm glad you pinned this picture for me, because Brendan Schaub. So I guess Schaub cried because of Shane Carwin. I guess they're close. But here's where it gets interesting, because someone sent me a video. I believe our boy Jeremy Wright was on top of this. He's our Ty Rivera correspondent, but he was good on this as well. And he's sending me all these videos where someone was breaking down. So Brendan Schaub calls Shane Carwin a brother. I guess Shane Carwin has said like they've kind of lost touch over the years.
Of course. That makes more sense.
So fucking everything Brendan Schaub brings up, the internet is so, to be fair, they watch this guy like a hawk. You know what I mean? So I'm sure some things are spun out of proportion and all kinds of stuff. But every time Brendan Schaub speaks, the Fighter and the Kid subreddit is able to be like, well, no. You're lying again. God damn it.
These fucking people in the chat are like, Brendan Schaub was a top 10 when it was like the worst the heavyweights ever been. He was still fucking there, guys. Relax.
Yeah, well, again, I don't know enough to know. Like, I assume, based on the fact that he's 100 pounds more, I imagine you have a decent chance against Nate Diaz.
He has
right?
a decent chance. He hits harder. Nate Diaz gets him on the ground. He's going to kill him.
Oh, well, that comes up here. That's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Then Brendan might be a little delusional.
Okay. He will kill him if it's on the ground. He only has a shot if it's standing up.
That's interesting you say that, because literally I know nothing about fighting, but you poked into the one thing that I am aware of that he talks about.
Okay.
So that's interesting. We'll get to that. But yeah, the boys at PF Chang's, I feel like they don't even like their job anymore, where they're like obligated. They're like, the guy just keeps lying. They're like, I'm just tired of chasing him at this point, but we have to. So Nate Diaz tweeted about Brendan Schaub crying over Shane Carwin. I guess Shane's dealing with, based on the video I watched of Brendan, I guess he has some addiction issues and he's having a lot of issues with CTE. And Brendan made a video breaking down about this guy's health. Now,
maybe that's why Shane Carwin doesn't think they've spoken.
Yeah, right. He just, who's this guy?
He just forgot.
So that could be viewed two ways, because remember, we played a video of Brendan Schaub crying about his daughter being sick. And I think you at the time were like, well, we can't even, it's hard to even make fun of this. And I did point out, I was like, he turned the phone on.
In the waiting room, it looked like. You were right in retrospect.
He put the phone on, he went to his camera, he flipped it around, he put the video on. Like, he chose to do this mid-cry. He could have waited, he could have collected himself and made the video. He chose to show us how emotional he was. So that is a factor with Brendan Schaub. It's like, Brendan Schaub might say, like, oh, you can't be a human being and have emotions. Of course you can. But you can also choose to, you can tell us later, hey, I had a breakdown over this. Or you can show us in hopes that we sympathize with you. And I do think that's a big difference. It's like a lot of people have been shitting on Bert Kreischer lately for posting videos like, or he'll post a picture like, just dropped my daughter off at school. And it's a picture of him like wiping the tears out of his eyes.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you took the picture. You had the presence of mind to take the photograph or the video, you know?
And I do want to say, before we get too far into this, if they are fighting and I'm putting money on someone, I am putting it on Nate Diaz.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident in the bet, but Schaub definitely.
I'm glad you clarified so people respect the UFC podcast you do. One day.
I was like, I am never, never. But
Craig completely caved to the chat, by the way. You remember a minute ago when he was like, fucking Brendan Schaub is one of the top 3 fighters ever. The chat gives him a minute of shit, and he's like, guys, I said Brendan Schaub's gay and Nate Diaz would win. What are you talking about?
Nate Diaz, what he sucks at is blocking punches from hitting his face. So you guys got 100 pounds on him.
Well,
He's gonna get it.
save your fight analysis for when Brendan Schaub speaks, because he makes some interesting points that I'd like to see what everyone thinks about him. But basically, Nate Diaz, after Brendan Schaub cried over Shane Carwin, Nate Diaz tweeted out something like, what a queer. I'm paraphrasing, but basically he mocked Brendan Schaub for being a little girl and crying. So he has another great tweet that I'll reference when we're done with this. But Nate Diaz giving Brendan shit online. And this is where, like, I don't really blame Brendan. There are people that I do blame. Like when a guy like Stuttering John is like, oh, you've been making fun of me? Well, then why don't we box? It's like, well, because I don't know, you're all comedians. With Brendan, who literally could rip all of our heads off.
For sure.
Sometimes it's like, hey, man, yeah, why don't you just threaten us? That is probably the best route to take. It's the path of least resistance, you know?
The only way, like, I know Legion of Skanks is like the three of us couldn't take him. Like, the only option, like, they would have is to throw Dave Smith at him and trip him somehow.
Right, all three of them, they like little rascals him or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is probably Brendan Schaub's best course, is to just be like, well, then I'll fight you. But it's interesting when that comes up with an actual UFC legend, Nate Diaz. So let's see how Brendan maturely handles, as a comedian would, this ribbing tweet that Nate Diaz sent out.
He tweets out, I think on Friday, driving my son to baseball practice, and a buddy or maybe my brother was like, oh God, here goes Nate Diaz again. I'm like, what? For what? He put Brendan the big old pussy.
This is a thing, and you guys know I'm more lenient with Brendan than most people are. I try to give the guy the benefit. I'm a thick boy, you know? I try to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. But this is a thing Brendan does where he's like, there's no reason to tell us you're driving your son to practice.
Also, the chat is pointing this out, and I forgot this happened. Nate Diaz called him a bitch to his face, and he didn't do a thing.
Well, that comes up also.
Oh, does it? Okay.
So that's very interesting. But Brendan, that's a tactic that I think guys like Brendan use, where it's like, hey, I was just living my life being a dad, man. Ain't got no care in the world except raising my son. And then this gets dropped on my table. Then people force me to react to this. It's like, well, you read it. You just read it. Like that. That's your job, Brendan, by the way, to know what's going on in your world. Like, that's part of your job. You don't have to make excuses and be like, guys, I don't even give a fuck about any of this. And then people forced me to read it.
A crying emoji. Okay. And this, I assume, and most people tell me that it's in response to me getting emotional over my friend of 20 years who I owe most of my UFC career to, because he paid for me when I couldn't afford the gym, couldn't afford private lessons, and we came up together. He became interim heavyweight champ. I became top 10 in the world, and we both started when he had one fight, I had none. So he's experiencing some of the worst side effects of dedicating his life to mixed martial arts. So me getting emotional about that, I guess that makes me a big old pussy. Which is weird.
Brendan, I do gotta say, like, you're a comic. Like, if Craig just referenced the Legion of Skanks, I remember Big J. Okerson was on some podcast, and they talked about Dice and his relationship with Dice, and Big J cried. They mocked him mercilessly after that. Like, that's what happens. If you cry, believe me, I know. If you cry in a podcast, you get made fun of. Whether or not the reason is legitimate, there's something about a man crying that sounds very silly, you know? So even if it's for a good reason, like, you can be made fun of for crying. That's kind of just what happens. You have to. So if you are a comedian, Brendan, this is where, like, this rant is great from a UFC analyst. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if this is just a guy that he pops on ESPN sometimes, or he's on Rogan, the Fight Companions on Rogan, and you just know him as a UFC guy, this is a good rant that Brendan goes on here. The problem is, Brendan has masqueraded as a comedian for the last. He's like, hey, I'm just one of the guys. You can rib me, baby. You can make fun of me for anything. Oh, yeah? Well, how about you crying in that video? I'll rip your fucking head off!
He's got all the confidence in the world because fucking Rogan's last special sucked.
Can you imagine if fucking, I don't know, if Theo Vaughn cried on a podcast and they made fun of him and his response was, well, man, I guess I'll have to fight you in the street. It's like, what? No, like people make fun of you for shit. What are you talking about?
Huh? Especially for crying. Like, come on.
Right, it's a mockable thing. And I get you were crying for good reason. But, you know, maybe they have bad blood already, him and Nate, so he knows it's not coming from a good place. But
yeah. No, they have bad blood.
yeah, so I guess he knows the tone it was said with, you know?
Right.
But still, you got to be a little more lighthearted when you cry on camera.
I don't get it. It's this whole, how honest do I want to be with you guys? This whole social media thing, like Brent didn't even tag me, Brent the big old pussy Schaub, crying emoji. Here's how I feel about it. This is just internet gossip, right? This gets him trending. He doesn't have a lot going on. Didn't get paid for the Masvidal fight. Probably doesn't know what he's going to do next.
Now, I got to ask a UFC-related question here.
Mm-hmm.
That struck me as odd because I don't follow this stuff, and I know who Nate Diaz is. Would you say Nate Diaz is a guy that doesn't have a lot going on?
He's like one of the bigger fan favorites of all time.
That's what I mean. Like, is he struggling somehow? I don't know. That struck me as strange, and it seems like another defense tactic Brendan uses where he's like, who even is this guy? You know?
Like, he probably didn't make all that much money, you know, in comparison to what people are doing now, because he was never really the top of the card until the end. He was always really good and like a tough guy, but I don't know how he didn't get paid for a fight. Maybe not the amount he wanted, but he definitely got paid for it.
That's what these are not the early days of UFC where you gotta hassle Dana White for a paycheck.
He's probably waiting on that. Connor's tied up with the TV right deal, so he's probably banking on that. He fought Masvidal, lost to Jake Paul, right? That's a big blow to
That's
his
true.
ego. So I guess
he did lose to Jake Paul.
He did lose to Jake Paul.
To stay current.
I always think that shit's staged, though. Am I crazy?
No,
No,
I don't think so. He's fighting,
just beating these career fighters.
yeah, but they're not career boxers, and they're like 20 years older than him.
Okay,
And he does hit hard. I think it was Tyron Woodley. He like really fucked up,
okay.
and it was kind
I'll
of
buy it.
surprising. Yeah.
Retired 15 years ago, man. That being said, that's social media. This isn't real. Because here's what's real. I will fuck you up. That's real. I'm not asking for this. I don't want to fuck him up. I'm not trying to fuck him up. End of the day, if he walked in right now, I said, Chin, Case, can you guys leave? Only one of us is going to walk out unscathed.
Now you just can't leave.
And it's me.
Okay, so if he's in a room full of stuff, he has no shot.
Really?
Yeah, no, dude. Like Nate Diaz will wrap him into a pretzel in 4 seconds.
Okay, well, he's saying that like, I'll make everyone leave and lock the doors.
The best chance he's got is in a cage where he can't trip on something with his gigantic legs.
So this is where I'm in a bit of a pretzel myself. Like, I like the response from Brendan. I like where it's like, hey man, fuck you. And now I would say you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is. And if Nate Diaz says okay, then you have to fight him. But like, I like the fire from Brendan. I like the energy. And when I hear this, I'm like, you should be in this work. You should be doing this type of stuff. The problem is Brendan was like, I'm a comedian. I'm one of the guys. Hey, Callan busts my chops and Chris D'Elia busts my chops. But if anyone else does it, you're like, I'm going to fight you. That's what's interesting to me. Is like, did Nate Diaz cross a line? You know, he didn't talk about your fan. He made fun of a video where you cried. Like, that doesn't seem to warrant this type of response. Again, they already have bad blood. I get it. But like I said, I like if I'm hearing Brendan for the first time in this video, I'm like, oh, I like this guy. The problem is I know who he is, you know?
Every fucking day of the week, 365 days a year, I will snap his fucking neck.
No.
I know. What's his fucking area code? 209? I know, 209. I get all that. Very cool. None of that is real.
Well, it is. That is. I do have to say, Brendan, just so you know, that is an actual area code.
Dana White hates Brendan Schaub so much he might sanction this.
He is from that section of the country, Brendan. Those are the first 3 numbers of his telephone.
Against Donald Cerrone. Did you see him? Leon Edwards. I get it. Dude, he's had some great fights. Tough dude. I don't give a fuck. I'm 245 pounds, trained black belt, top 10 UFC heavyweight in the world at one point. I'm not out of shape. I'm a fucking beast when it comes down to, I know, I tell jokes, I do crazy shit.
Okay, here's where he loses me again.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys are thinking, but Brendan, you're so hilarious. You guys are thinking, a comedy legend like you, Brendan? Listen, I love George Carlin and I love Stephen Wright, but they're not getting in the ring, Brendan. You're made to make us laugh.
Right.
No. Everyone's been saying you should have stuck to the UFC world. You shouldn't have tried to dip your toe. He's like, you guys probably think I'm too funny to be tough.
He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu too, but Nate Diaz is just the top of that, and he's probably keeping himself in fight shape.
Yeah, it's the 100-pound difference or whatever it is interesting to me because I just don't know how that a novice like me would assume Brendan would win that, but.
Oh, he got knocked out by Nogueira. He's into trucks. I get all that. Firing the kids.
He's into trucks. No one's like, there is no way. I'll tell you one thing about.
Oh my God, that's Brendan Schaub from Toontown.
I'll tell you one thing about Nate Diaz. He ain't losing a fight to some truck-loving comedian. A guy who likes sedans, that's fine. But some pussy that's into trucks, I don't think so. Not on my watch.
At the end of the day, the way this works, I'm not a civilian like the rest of his goons around him. I'm not this fake gangster. I don't go looking for fights. I know I'm tough. I don't have to get on Twitter.
I wouldn't say Nate Diaz is fake anything. just for the record.
And blast it out and prove it every day because I'm insecure because whatever shit he has going on with his childhood trauma. I don't have to do that. At the end of the day, I will twist your fucking neck off. Ask your boys. There's many of guys that you fucks with that I've rolled with. Ask them how it went.
So again, knowing nothing, I'm like, oh, this guy's pretty confident.
Oh no, dude, he has more than like a puncher's chance.
Right. I would like to see that. Maybe Jake Paul could set this up, right? Like the thing that they do, whatever that's called.
Yeah, but Schaub won't do it.
Well, that's the problem. He's guaranteeing he would.
Right, because he knows it can't happen.
So I say, Brendan, you kind of have to do it. So if Nate Diaz accepts, you have to do it. I know we have another clip or two to play, but can I tell you what Nate's response was to this rant?
Yeah, man, set it up. I'll fuck you up.
He tweeted out, I think you'd be surprised. Which is the obvious, I would have made that joke talking about this if Nate didn't. Like, that feels like the obvious response. When Brendan is talking about fighting someone, there is now like a canned response that Joe Rogan created. I think you'd be surprised.
Nope, that was what's his face?
Oh right, it was Brian Callen.
Callen.
As we heard in the special, and it was the Chinese doctor.
That's right, Mr. Schaub.
Oh, the guy speaks better English than us.
Brendan, your knee is not looking very good. That's not what he sounds like. Your brain be mushy peas.
Yeah. So the guy bows to me and hits his gong, and he says, he told me,
very dishonorable.
This doctor told me I'd never be able to walk again. And I said, really? And he said, well, as you know, we play joke. If you don't know what we're talking about, go watch You'd Be Surprised on Showtime.
Oddly enough, the peak of his comedy career, too.
Absolutely. Well, no, I take that back. Gringo Poppy.
it was the peak of his comedy career that he wants to accept.
Oh, yes, absolutely, definitely.
Sorry, I didn't specify.
Yeah.
Next, we have Losing Steam.
Yeah, so Brendan's on this rant and he's going good, and then he starts saying something. It's almost the opposite of Will Ferrell in Old School, where you know what I mean. Like he goes on this rant, he doesn't know what he said, he blacked out. Brendan's got this rant going, and then it's almost like the magic potion wore off, and he starts sounding like Brendan Schaub.
What are you gonna do, Nate? What are you gonna do? Volume punch me, motherfucker?
No.
That's what you're gonna do? What are you gonna do? Out grapple me?
Yes.
In what fucking sense?
Okay, so this is where he's saying if it comes to grappling, that's why I was surprised when you said that. He said if it comes to grappling, Nate doesn't stand a chance.
No, that's not even. Nope.
Okay, well,
Like if they did a boxing match, I would probably put money on Schaub.
okay,
Because
that's interesting because he literally wants to go the other route.
Nate doesn't seem to be able to knock anyone out ever, but he takes punches like Homer Simpson.
Okay,
He's a brick shithouse or whatever.
yeah.
He just doesn't go down. So once they eventually do get on the ground, he'll choke everybody out. That's how it goes.
So you hear Brendan getting pretty hot under the collar there, and I like this fire. What are you gonna do, motherfucker? I like that. I'm like, all right, get him, Brendan. And then he starts sounding a little too much like Brendan Schaub here.
What world are you living in? This is the real world. Now, if you're doing this because you fancy yourself a fisticuffs, if you fancy yourself
No.
to grapple me,
No. That's not the. I was going to say it's not the phrase. It's not anything. It's not a sentence.
You fancy yourself a fisticuffs?
I was hoping you'd react like that because I was like, is there a phrase in fighting that I'm not aware of or something?
You fancy yourself a fighter, a grappler?
If you fancy yourself a fisticuffs. Yeah, that's where I was like, oh, Brendan.
Nope, that was terribly wrong.
Got ahead of your skis there, buddy.
doing
If you fancy yourself a melee. Well, Mr. Diaz, if you think of yourself as a brouhaha.
You fancy yourself as a Donnybrook?
Well, if it isn't Mr. Skirmish.
Shout out Donnybrook.
That was a good one. I liked it.
because you fancy yourself a fisticuffs. If you fancy yourself, you want to actually grapple me.
Oh,
Okay, he tried it a second time, and then he was like, I don't think I'm using this correctly. If you fancy yourself, well, whatever. If you want to grapple with me, I guess is what I'm saying.
ooh, I would love to see that.
When he says that, I'm thinking like in Brendan's mind, it's just like the Notre Dame logo, like the guy with his dukes up. Like if you fancy yourself a fisticuffs.
That's the thing is like, it's really fun to shit on Brendan Schaub. This is the one thing you really can't. Like he does know what he's doing.
Well, yes, but then it seems to me you're saying he picked out the one area of Nate Diaz's game that he would massacre him.
He is so good at jujitsu.
Well, let's hear him talk grappling.
Not hard to get a hold of. Pull the fuck up.
That was the end of that clip.
There's another one, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's hear that because he gets a little more in depth with specifics.
This is a tough guy.
He is a tough guy, as you hear here. So that's what I want to know is if Brendan Schaub can back this up because now I'd love to see this. This is a fight I would give a fuck about. Usually I don't care.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I hope you go on to make more money than God, dude. But what you're not going to do is pretend you're a tough guy. I know tough guys. You're not one of them, Nate.
Oh, shut
Well, now
up.
hold on. I gotta say,
up.
Bren, maybe by UFC standards or whatever, I gotta say, if I see Nate Diaz in the street and he bumps into me, if he bumps into me, pushes me, insults my girlfriend, I'm saying, yes, sir, right away. Very good.
Dude, he is like one of the tougher guys. That's how he like lasts in fights because he just takes damage.
Yeah, Brendan, the people you're talking to on this podcast, we're not walking up to Nate Diaz and going, well, if it isn't the town pussy. If it isn't the coward of Arizona.
I don't think a single UFC fighter, even ones that are slated to fight Nate Diaz, have ever said that.
Oh, it's the little bitch, Nate Diaz.
Except for like maybe Conor McGregor, but he lost to him once, maybe twice. But you know,
Yeah, and again, I get this is like, this would be what you do to hype up a fight, but you can't talk like this and then not fight the guy, you know?
that's true.
It's badass. You're not. You're no different than anybody else. You're a terrible fucking athlete.
I'd like to advocate for Nate Diaz. He's different than some of us.
Different than he's in the 1% of the 1% for sure.
There's some people he's different than, you know? Like if Brendan Schaub was talking to me like this, sure, I'd be shitting my pants. But Nate Diaz comes out with a good zinger. the perfect dig. I think you'd be surprised.
All good, dude. You're a tough guy from Sacramento. Where I come from, you're not
Sacramento,
a tough
that's
guy.
where he's from. The coward of Sacramento.
Tough's not making fun of somebody because they get emotional about their friend having major fucking side effects for dedicating their lives to MMA.
No,
Yeah,
tough.
Brendan, I agree.
Feelings.
But as a human being, I agree with that. But have you not learned, Brendan, in 10 years of comedy or whatever it's been now, maybe more than that, have you not learned that this is the wrong response? To like someone makes fun of you and you reply seriously and go, "Hey, well, what's wrong with a little emotion?"
Brendan Job the fucking pussy.
Brendan, do you want me to answer literally? What's wrong with emotion? Nothing. It's fine. You can cry when your boy is going through something. Perfectly fine.
That emotion's not a problem. This one is gay.
Yeah, but when people make fun of you and say, "Ooh, Brendan's crying," you don't go, "No, I'm not. You're crying." Okay. I thought you were a comic.
Tough isn't getting on there and tweeting to people to get his fan base to bully him. Cyberbullying.
This is what a mom at a PTA meeting would say about bullying. Like, hey,
Tough is going to your daughter's dance recital and supporting her.
being tough is crying once in a while. Being in touch with your emotion. That's what being a tough guy is. It's like, okay, Nana Schaub.
Being tough is when you're there for your parents in their twilight years. Shut up, Brendan.
Being tough is showing emotion. It's like, yeah, but if Nate Diaz beat you in a fight, that would also be pretty tough, I guess.
Say anything in person. And again, if this pisses you off or you and I cross paths wherever it's at, you solo one-on-one, you're not going to do shit. That's the reality. The whole Stockton slab, I will fuck you up.
Ooh.
I love the confidence. It's just overconfident.
And it's longer than that. He goes on for about 20 minutes. And I looked at the comments. I was going to say, granted, it's on the Thick Boy channel, but like a lot of Brendan's audience fucks with him and trolls with him. The comments were like, "Hey, this is the Schaub I've been missing. This is the guy I like." So I like the bluster and the gusto, but like, is there anything to back it up, or are you just talking shit? Because what it is doing, if you can't back it up and don't plan on backing it up, what you are doing is proving you're definitely not a comedian. You know, you might be tougher than Nate Diaz. I have no idea, but it does kind of prove you're not really a comic. The guy just busted your balls a little bit.
If they do fight and he wins, that'd be fucking cool. I'd be all for it.
That would be the finally redemption for Brendan Schaub. That would be cool.
No.
So I would say to Brendan, do it or don't go on rants like this. You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good fight. I mean, like he's got 100 pounds on him, but
the thing is, with the weight difference, could we get that sanctioned anywhere?
not in the UFC.
Rough and rowdy, baby. Bring it back.
Rough and rowdy.
Honestly, Portnoy should try to do that. If they want to restore Rough and Rowdy, could you imagine how many fucking pay-per-view buys that would be?
Oh my god. So many.
Portnoy, set it up. Nate Diaz versus Brendan Schaub. Let's start that rumor. Nate Diaz versus Brendan Schaub at Rough and Rowdy.
Rough and rowdy. Go to blindmike.net for everything Blind Mike. Look at me. I did it. Kragers did it.